Welcome once again to Space and Harmony, in Harmonia of Life. Surely many of you have heard the famous phrase, "Ask and you shall receive," attributed to the Master. What we barely notice is that we are constantly asking and receiving, first with our viewpoints, our unconscious and subconscious way of seeing things, all of which generate thoughts, which generate emotions and feelings, and finally all that comes in the form of actions, like throwing stones into the water. It generates waves, and these waves attract other events. Everything we see, think, feel and do is already generating waves of attraction. So the first point is in the unconscious, and that's where we start manifesting the life we are living. This is something that is becoming somehow popular in some circles. There are actually techniques in order to clean the subconscious and modify the ways of thinking in order to attract, some say, abundance and shape reality in accord to their wishes. This is something that I already touched in one of the videos about manifesting abundance, and like I said in that video, there is an underlying problem, which is all we attract in accord to our thoughts and views is not necessarily coming from our essential being. And today I'm going to give you a key which is going to clarify many things. It has to do with the Hebrew word MeLeK, which means king. We'll see that the three letters in that word represent the way our true being unfolds, working in harmonia. And first of all, we must realize that the Holy One already made us kings of life. The problem is that we've been conditioned to think in a completely wrong way, looking always outwards and not going back to the center, which is everywhere. The center around which all things gather, manifesting unicity. And in this unicity we are cells of the all being, and as such we are the face of the Holy One, so long as we manifest harmonia. And when we feel this inner abundance and harmonia, we don't need to worship external material things or external gods, or even a separate entity some call God, without knowing. As Master said, we worship what we know, and that's the core of our being. This is something realized by those who already have what was known as the mind of the Messiah, or the mind of the Anointed One, the mind of divine understanding, which is not just the seed, but the unfolding of an understanding that must lead to a life of action in harmonia. Even Paul, Shaul, said that those who have already received the mind of the Messiah, the mind of divine understanding, are already sitting on celestial thrones. And he already said that we have been blessed with every blessing by the Holy One in the Anointed One, and in the mind of understanding, with the works that were prepared before the foundation of the world. And this means each one of us has a specific set of gifts and tasks to develop in this fallen world, precisely to rescue the fallen life and help others going back to the tree of life. And of course this means walking as kings of life and not as slaves or robots of a society conditioned by religion, politics, science. So let's find out what's the meaning of walking as kings of life. And the first thing we must realize is that there is a divine logic which is actually expressed by the divine verb, the I am love that opens a space to the full truth, the vitality and calm. But this verb can be reversed, taken in vain. This is why it was said, you shall not take the name or vibration of the Holy One in vain. If we think and feel, I am defeated, I am weak, I am lost, I don't know what to do, then we become that confusion. And if we accept defeat and confusion, we lose the chance of finding out everything that is inside, which is the key to find our being and grow. Then we lose the chance of manifesting the works that were prepared for us. And there is actually a very revealing passage, Mark 11:20, in which Master Yeshua is with the disciples and he curses a fig tree, and the fig tree gets dry suddenly. And the disciples obviously were surprised. Then Master Yeshua says, if you have no doubt in your heart and tell a mountain to take off and throw itself into the water, it will do it. And he adds, if you pray and ask, convinced that you have already received that, then you shall receive it. And most of us always had difficulty understanding this teaching because we were following the old ways of thinking, which are actually represented by the fig tree. The fig tree represents religion in a general sense, not only religion and as we understand it. Actually, religion can take place in spirituality, in politics, in science, and even in general culture. There is a religion of sports and many other things. And the main characteristic of religion is not just worship, but using repetitive techniques and rituals in order to achieve something which one does not have, which is not integrated in one's being. You may remember when Master Yeshua said, don't pray like the Pharisees, which think that by repeating many words they are going to be heard by the divine. We also find this tendency to repetition in different forms of psychology when they try to generate self-esteem and shape the unconscious and modify the beliefs by means of repeating affirmations, I am strong, I have abundance, I am worthy. Scientists use techniques in order to manipulate nature, always by repetitive means, and so on and so on. And if you notice, all that lacks something which is essential in life, and is originality. The uniqueness and original manifestations that emerge spontaneously from the unicity of being. We cannot be original and unique by means of repeating, be it mantras or mechanical techniques, or simply what others do. The spontaneity of life, the manifestation of our unique originality is more the act of loving unconditionally and flourishing with all our gifts, going beyond our shadows. And going beyond our shadows means to love with all our being. And this is exactly contained in the word MeLeK, and also in the wrongly called first commandment, which is not a commandment because the Holy One does not command anything and nobody can command to love, because love is spontaneous. The Hebrew word is mitzvot, connections. Actually, when the Master was asked by the doctors of the law, the Pharisees, about what they regarded as commandments, he said that the most important is to love the divine unicity with all your heart, all your emotional soul, and all your mind. This is actually well translated in some of the Gospels, because it does not appear in the translations of the Bible usually, in the Old Testament. It's necessary to read the text in Hebrew and understand its wisdom. And this first connector means that when we are in unicity, we shall love with all our heart, all our emotional soul, and all our mind, and the neighbor as ourselves, because there is no division anymore. And the neighbor is not someone with the same faith or way of thinking as some religious people think. The love we are talking about is unconditional, and is actually what makes us kings. And king in Hebrew is MeLeK, 3 letters, which, as I already said in the video Who is the True King, symbolize 3 levels, which I'm going to expand now. The first letter stands for Moaj, which means brain, and also understanding, which is made possible by the breath of understanding, or neshama, which is related to the word Mashiach, anointed one, which actually means there is understanding. So understanding is to make contact with the anointed one, which is our higher dimension, which can clean actually many negative and wrong thoughts and help us get rid of even psychic attacks. But we must establish a conscious rapport with this dimension of ourselves. In a very similar way as how ancient myths describe the relation of Enki and Adapa, or Prometheus and Epimetheus. But those of us who are receiving the teaching of the Anointed One, demonstrated by Yeshua, are far way beyond many teachings of ancient civilizations. Now, the second letter of MeLeK is Lamed, which stands for Leb, heart. This is why the first calling and connection is you shall love the divine unicity with all your heart. And from the heart of unicity comes true unconditional love, not passional, instinctive love, or emotional love, or intellectual love. True unconditional love gathers, reconciles mind and body, not only on an individual level, but on a cosmic level as well. All the plants we see here and the trees can be seen as the body of a universal mind, logos, Mem-Ra in Aramaic, which is actually the corporeal expression of intelligence. We could say a universal brain. This is why we read in John chapter 1, in the beginning was the logos, the Mem-Ra, the manifestation of the universal brain in the tree of life. However, in this world, life was disconnected from that because of the modifications made by the architects in the tree of life. The essence of that life was hijacked, and the architects made their own tree of good and deficient, tree of good and bad, which is actually an expression of the fig tree in a cosmic dimension. This is why they base everything in laws, which have nothing to do with true unconditional love. Laws rule religion, politics, and science, shaping the fallen culture in which we exist. On the contrary, the true intelligence, the true logos or Mem-Ra, contains the essence of the wisdom of light, which is known as Torah, wrongly translated as the word of God or law, even worse, which are all religious concepts that have nothing to do with true and conditional love. And finally, the third letter in the word MeLeK, king, is Haf, and stands for Kabed, which means liver in Hebrew. And this is a very profound key. In some modern interpretations of Hebrew wisdom, the brain is seen as the electric aspect, the heart is the magnetic aspect that reconciles, and the liver would represent the force of gravity, which actually manifests events, miracles. Some say that Moses made miracles with the liver, because liver Kabed has a geometric value of 26, just as the tetragrammaton, the divine Verb. So it has the same weight of consciousness. But now we must understand that a healthy liver plays a very important role, because if the liver is not filtering fats and mucus properly, the body gets uncomfortable, gets sick, congested, its vibration is lowered, and it becomes the vehicle of lower passions and emotions. If you remember, sensations are things like tingling or itching, but then we have emotions that are energy in motion that moves us to act, and this can be a state of well-being or distress, choleric manifestations, anger, even gluttony, all of which are animal expressions very much related to the state of the liver. A very different subject would be the sentiments and feelings which entail an aspect of the mind. So we are dealing with the liver aspect, and what very few know is that the problem does not start in the liver, but in the mucus the body generates in order to protect itself from anti-physiological foods, which are most of the foods we consume, because everything has been modified, so we can't find anything natural. And the body generates a mucus. You can actually feel that mucus being generated in the back of the throat, and it mixes with the food, especially when we eat too much or something which is too unnatural or too strange for the body. And the accumulation of this mucus mixed with food, starches and other things which are undigestible congest the liver, and the liver release all that mucus into the blood thickens, and obviously the body gets congested all over, and this lowers the vibration, the vitality. It opens the way to lower emotions, negative emotions, and the body becomes a vehicle even of psychic demonic energies, if it's too weak or too negatively influenced. Curiously, the master said it's not what comes from the outside what gets you sick, but what comes from the inside, from the heart. Evil thoughts, but also all the passions of gluttony, different forms of lusts, and the mucus, which also comes from within, curiously. And this is precisely the reason why those who eat from the fig tree never change. They can worship for years, pray for years, and remain the same inside, with the same passions. Therefore, it's also essential to learn an intelligent way of eating. I'll speak about it in some future video, but at the moment we must realize that transformation is when love takes place on all levels. The mind, the heart, and the actions of the body, even an intelligent way of eating. And expressing that originality of life each one has is actually unfolding the divine verb, the unconditional love that opens a space to the unique truth inside, which leads to a true vitality, a life that overcomes any negative situation, any obstacle. Greater works you shall do, said the Master. Actually, most of us did not receive the formation Yeshua received in childhood. And despite most of us got lost and beaten by the forces of darkness, we found ourselves again, because life is our true essence. And when we are humble enough and allow the intelligence of the divine anointed one in us, this life finds its way, leading us to the true calm in harmonia. Calm which is not the result of consuming stimulant foods or drugs of any kind, nor losing ourselves in pastimes to forget worries. True calm is the result of transformation in unconditional love. Therefore, let's open the way to the blessings of life coming from the Holy One.